This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome to this special program, The Importance of Being Protected. Your life, how do you take care of people around you if something unforeseen is to happen to you? So we're putting together this special show to look at a specific index. We are trying to put together the India Protection Quotient 2019, and this particular show done by NDTV in partnership with Max Life Insurance, we're trying to see how protected do people feel that they really are. How can attitudes continue to change in those areas where people are not feeling protected? How do we make sure that protection reaches out to them? And we're also going to take a look at some of the data which is out there, data resulting from a specific study that was done, assessing the level of protection and how protected people are actually feeling in a number of very important urban centers. Joining us in the program, first of all, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have with us somebody whom I've often considered one of the most dynamic bureaucrats that the country's had in a very, very long time. Amitabh Kant, the CEO of Niti Aayog, helping put together many of the policies of the government, will be able to shed some light on what the government's thinking is around this entire subject. Prashant Tripathi, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Our partner out here, Managing Director and CEO of Max Life Insurance, great to have you with us. And Soumya Mohanty, Chief Client Officer at Kantar IMRB, put together some of the data and the research behind the India Protection Quotient, and we will be getting you to share some of that data with us in just a couple of minutes. But Mr. Kant, if I can just start off with you. When you're looking at protecting the poorest or the poor or the lower middle class, the concept of insurance, of making sure that if something unforeseen happens, then families are not pushed into poverty, are not pushed back into, they may have risen up the ladder out of poverty, and then something happens, something terrible happens, and quite often they're pushed back down. Is this something that is a major area of concern for the government?
60 lakh families go below the poverty line simply because they are not insured. There's lack of tertiary care for them, and many of them end up with cardio surgery or several other illnesses, and they just do not have the resources. They are not adequately insured, and that was one of the key reasons why we pushed for health insurance in a very big way. And the new scheme of Ayushman Bharat really covers 500 million Indians, but that's the health part of it. More important is the life part of it, and I think we need to make life insurance a very, very major area of growth for the Indians, particularly those living below the poverty line. And this would require us to do several things. First of all, our insurance policies are full of legal terminology. We need to go easy and simple. Secondly, I think we need to push for digitization in a very big way. And thirdly, the use of mobile phone, because every Indian has a mobile phone. And fourthly, I think we need to link it up with biometrics. India remains underinsured in a very major way, and I think what's important is that this is an area which can have leaps and bounds of growth in India and can have a quantum trajectory of growth, but this can make a major difference to the life of Indians, particularly those living below the poverty line.
Mr. Kant, I'm just going to ask you to pause. I'm just going to throw some of those points then before I actually even get into the India Protection Quotient and the data there. Some of the suggestions made by Mr. Kant out there. If we really want to spread insurance to everybody, make it simple, no legal terminology, no loopholes, no ways of getting out, use mobile phones, figure out ways of directly using new technologies to get refunds to people. Are those really good suggestions, you think?
They are reasonably good suggestions. It's just that it takes a bit longer for the effect to be seen, because insurance is not a very engaged category where the consumers are kind of queuing up to buy insurance, unlike a consumer durable or a mobile phone where people are just queuing up to buy. These are not very engaged categories. So even if you start to make the effort, unless there is a policy push, it becomes really hard for us to drive that home. In our research that we have done, we haven't even gone down to the level that Mr. Kant was talking about, which is below poverty line people, etc. We are still talking about Sec A, B people in top 15 cities, and that's where we see a gap in terms of protection, imagine what will be the level of protection for other people.
So some of the data that you showed said that 65% of people and we are now talking about urbans, and
Yes.
slightly better off people, Sec A and B. 65% had insurance, but only 35% felt they were protected. That's a statistic which surprised me when I saw it.
I'll just make a marginal correction. It's not percentage. So we created a composite score. So if you assume that 100 meant fully protected, we found that index to be 35, which means there is no strong correlation between ownership and the feeling that one individual is carrying with respect to being protected. The key reason, predominantly is because the level of sum assured when a person buys is much lower than what would give his family protection in case something bad were to happen to him.
Right. Mr. Kant, only 35% of people in urban India, and this is, Sec A, B, are feeling they have the protection. So that means, they are aware that if something untoward was to happen, then their families could potentially face a lot of problems.
No, these are really shocking statistics, and this is about protection. Life insurance is equally bad. It doesn't give you any, similar kind of statistics. And what I found amazing in this survey was that, the southern part of India does well, the eastern part of India does well, surprisingly. But it's the northern and the western part of India which doesn't do well. So we need to really push for it in these two regions. And I think while the survey is a little limited, but my view is that we need to do a survey on Tier 2, Tier 3 cities as well, because that's the area which is going to be the next big push towards insurance. And this would require us, a more exhaustive kind of a survey would be required for Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. But I was quite surprised as to why the western part of India is so heavily underinsured.
And let's now get a sense of what IRDAI thinks of all of this. Great pleasure to be joined by Mr. Nilesh Sathe. So what, according to you, are the main reasons for the low penetration of insurance in India? And what changes would you suggest to have a better understanding of insurance products and the benefits of buying them?
See, what is important is the product should be easy to sell, easy to understand, and taking into account the low penetration in India, it should have higher sum assured at low premium. If at all they can be marketed through online, that is something which will definitely help, especially the IT savvy new millennials that they want to buy insurance, but they don't have time to spend with the insurance advisors discussing for hours about the importance and what protection gap is required to be filled in. So these are some of the measures that can be taken in addition to publicity, which is required to be taken forward. In school curriculum and college curriculum, there, if at all we can introduce some subject on financial literacy, that will definitely help. And the OECD is also actually advising Government of India for introducing a subject on financial literacy in the school curriculum. So these are some of the measures which will help increase the penetration.
I think, Soumya, if I could just turn to you for any other findings from the data. Mr. Kant was saying that it's important for women to have insurance. Absolutely. And actually, from what I saw from your data, women are feeling even less protected than anyone else's.
Absolutely. In fact, the two big stories that come out from the data, one is the women's story and the other is the millennial story. Both these groups do not feel as protected as the average. And women particularly, even when they are working, if you compare them with working men, they feel less protected. They actually are spending both their money on daily expenses more than men. They are also, if you look at their savings pattern, they are not really saving towards retirement to the extent that men are saving towards retirement. So there is that perception that men will take care of things, and so the women are more focused on the day-to-day spendings. The same sort of applies to the millennials as well. Millennials also are more focused on the day-to-day car, buying a house, rather than planning for retirement.
That's actually interesting why millennials would not be. Is it because they would be familiar, I guess, with technology? Is it just that they feel invulnerable? हमारे क्या होगा? Doesn't matter. We are young. We don't have to worry about these things right now.
बिल्कुल वैसे ही है. उनको लगता है हमें कुछ नहीं हो सकता और enjoy. This is a new way of thinking. Enjoy as long as the ride lasts. Just have fun.
होना चाहिए, आराम करो, पिक्चर देखो, खाना खाओ, ये चिंता नहीं करो और अभी जिंदगी बहुत आगे है.
बिल्कुल सही.
वही प्रॉब्लम है.
बिल्कुल सही.
Is that the attitude? आपको भी क्या लगता है? यही एटीट्यूड सामने आया क्या?
जी, I mean 40% ऐसे हमारे 25 से 30 साल की उम्र में मिलेनियल्स हैं जो फैमिली के प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में सोच ही नहीं रहे हैं. वो सोच रहे हैं घर खरीदें, घर अब इजी हो गया खरीदना, गाड़ी के बारे में सोच रहे हैं, लेकिन रिटायरमेंट फैमिली के प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में नहीं सोच रहे हैं.
ओके, मिस्टर कांत, looking at some of that fine print in the data, are you surprised by? I mean, as you said, women definitely should be thinking a lot more about insurance than they are. But for the millennials, I mean, is it something which you think would be expected? You know, you're 23 to 24. You're not really thinking about life insurance. It's not time for us to think about that. Actually, that's probably just the time when you should start worrying about doing life insurance, figuring out long-term saving schemes, worrying about financial security. But sometimes when you're, as you were just discussing, when you're 22, 23, you probably think you are invulnerable.
So Vikram, there are, a couple of things. One is that, we need a huge amount of extension and mass communication around insurance policies. Number two, I think we need to do a massive campaign in the country, much like we've driven the campaign for bank accounts, much like we've driven the campaign for digital payments. Similarly, we need a campaign for insurance in partnership with the insurance companies around India. And I think that's the next big quantum jump that will happen if government and the private sector was to collaborate to bring insurance to the citizens of India. In several schemes, particularly on health side, we provided insurance through government. But I think we need to strike a product which is easy, simple, which has low premiums, which is across the country, and we are able to expand the reach of insurance across India through a major mass initiative.
How a campaign like the one that you're just suggesting could actually work out if the government and the private sector together say, let's get into mission mode, let's try and drive protection and try and drive life insurance across the country. What would it be? What is it that they need to do? What is it that the government needs to do? Let's just see if we can have a discussion. Is Mr. Kant's suggestion something you think is eminently doable? And if so, how can it be done?
I think the industry in its own limited way, and for your information, Vikram, has started to work on this agenda already. There is a committee called Insurance Awareness Committee, which has been formed on behalf of all the life insurance companies, including LIC.
And all of them are working in partnership.
And all of us are working together, contributing funds. And, by the end of this year, we will have reasonable fund for at least 1 year of running a very massive campaign to educate people, to make them aware about life insurance. So that we are doing anyways. Mr. Khan's suggestion in terms of, government aiding it and working together will turbocharge this initiative. So I quite welcome.
So what would you need from him?
I think there was an initiative that was run, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana. Mr. Kant, of course, was a force behind it. So, that initiative, when it ran, it had the components of everything that Mr. Kant was saying. It was digital, it was simple, it was easy. So, if the government can come up with plans like that, not just covering the lowest strata of people, but for broader set of people, because the gap exists everywhere else, I think the insurance industry will be more than willing to work with the government to drive the awareness as well as ownership. There is one gap that we are noticing, which is around owning term insurance. And term predominantly is a protection plan. It has no component of saving. We are finding that only one person out of 5 in this segment has got term plan.
Because interestingly, insurance has become like a tax saving instrument. Section 80C is something karna hai, to tax bachana hai, to insurance leni chahiye. But actually insurance should be required for protection, not for tax.
जी. तो उस एजेंडा को हम कैसे आगे लेके जाएं, लोगों को कैसे समझाएं और एक बड़ा अवेयरनेस कैंपेन कैसे रन करें, अगर गवर्नमेंट उसमें हमारे को हेल्प करेगी तो हम बहुत अच्छा काम कर पाएंगे.
Mr. Kanji, so you're hearing that the industry may be willing to partner with you on this. What do you think the next step should be? And is this something which you think the government would be in a position to consider? As he is saying that it's not that the government hasn't done it before, and with Ayushman Bharat and others, you've shown that it can be done in areas like health insurance. It's a potentially transformative policy. So, the mission mode that you are suggesting should be something which should be feasible.
हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस साइड पे तो भारत सरकार कर रही है बहुत ज़ोरों से मिशन मोड में, और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को इन्वॉल्व किया है, और करीब 50 करोड़ भारतीयों को हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस दिया जा रहा है जो कि SECC डेटा में दारिद्र्य रेखा के नीचे हैं. तो इसी तरह लाइफ इंश्योरेंस के लिए भी एक जन आंदोलन बहुत ज़रूरी है, और मेरे विचार से इस पर हम लोग विचार करेंगे और इंश्योरेंस कंपनी के साथ चर्चा करके इसको भी आगे ले चलेंगे, क्योंकि ये अगले कदम में ये बहुत ज़रूरी रहेगा. और ख़ासकर औरतों के लिए अगर हमें जेंडर पैरिटी लानी है, और भारत के प्रधानमंत्री जी का जो बड़ा दृढ़ निश्चय है कि बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ, तो उसके लिए उनके लिए इंश्योरेंस की बहुत आवश्यकता है. और ख़ासकर औरतों के लिए, और जो कि ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में रहते हैं और टायर 2 टायर 3 सिटी में रहते हैं, उनके लिए एक ज़रूरी है कि एक कार्यक्रम और एक विस्तार से एक प्रोग्राम बनाया जाए जिसमें हम इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज़ के साथ काम करेंगे, और नीति आयोग इसमें उनके साथ हाथ मिला के आगे बढ़ेगा.
Okay, I think that's an interesting idea that has emerged from this. सौम्या, अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कोई और अगर फाइंडिंग्स थी आपकी स्टडी में जिन पर हमें विचार करना चाहिए. एक और चीज़, कभी कभी ये कहा जाता है, अगर आप हिंदुस्तानियों से पूछें कि आप इंश्योरेंस क्यों नहीं लेते हैं, अगर कुछ हो जाएगा तो क्या होगा, तो काफ़ी बार लोग कहते हैं भगवान देखभाल करेगा.
वही आया है कि हम जब उनसे पूछते हैं आप क्यों नहीं ले रहे हैं, काफ़ी लोग तो पहले सोचते हैं कि उनके साथ कुछ होगा ही नहीं. 80% के आसपास सोच रहे हैं कि उनके साथ कुछ भी नहीं होगा. थोड़ा आप अंदर जाते हैं और उनसे और आगे पूछते हैं तो बोलते हैं भगवान तो है ना, और ऐसी चीज़ों के बारे में हम सोचना ही नहीं चाहते हैं. तो ये जो हमारा एक क्या कहते हैं आप, इनर्शिया है, या हम जो डेस्टिनी या फेट पे सब कुछ छोड़ देते हैं, वो एक बहुत बड़ा बैरियर है. इसलिए जो प्रशांत कह रहे हैं और जो अमिताभ जी कह रहे हैं कि हमें एक कैंपेन की ज़रूरत है, सिर्फ छोटे तबकों के लिए नहीं. बट ये सर्वे हुआ है SEC A-B 15 बड़े शहरों में, मेट्रो टियर 1 में. ये सारे जो आए हैं वो उस जनता से आए हैं, तो उनमें भी ऐसी मिसकंसेप्शंस हैं.
फाइनल थॉट्स, आपको क्या लगता है अब क्या किया जाना चाहिए?
We always used to say that there's a big protection gap, and it never gelled well with the level of ownership that we saw. Now we can factually establish that ownership of life insurance policy doesn't mean that the person is protected. So there are of course ways to handle that. Awareness definitely will play a very big role. We need to work on awareness. Some of the thoughts that Mr. Kant shared in terms of simplifying the products, keeping the legalese out and keeping it simple for people to adopt, comparable, low price, all that the industry is working on.
And using mobile and digital, which is one of the big areas where I think India may...
On that one, we had some startling outcomes and findings in the report.
Which were?
Which says that of the people that we met, only 6% bought from digital. Still 79% of the people do like to deal with agents and buy from agents, 15% from banks. So, unlike a retail segment where, penetration of digitization is happening much faster, in insurance where it is a dormant sales category, the increase in penetration is much slower.
And that's true for the millennials also?
Millennials are slightly better, but they're not out of whack.
All right, Mr. Kant, last final words from you, sir. We've taken many of the suggestions that you made out here. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Vikram, these findings come out like this because the insurance policies are full of legalities. And we are used, everybody is used to agents coming and insuring, and explaining to you the products. So products need to be extremely simple. They need to be told in a very simplified manner. and they need to be sold in different languages of the country. You know, you can't have an insurance policy only in English. If you want to spread out insurance across the country, you need insurance policies in the different dialects of the country. This is important. India remains underinsured, it remains underprotected, and I think this is the next big quantum leap which India must take to provide a better livelihood to the peoples of India and a better assurance to the people of India, and to ensure that people do not suffer on account of any unforeseen circumstances or any illness. And therefore, while we've done this in the health insurance side, we need to push the boundaries on the life insurance side.
Well, I couldn't have thought of a better way to sum it all up than what Mr. Kantar just said. So thank you all so much for joining us. Let's hope that we can proceed and find better ways to protect India. Thank you so much for being with us.